packaging is of paramount importance when it comes to deliveries. People eat with their eyes, and first impressions are everything. The same care and attention that goes into plating food in the restaurant must carry through with the packaging for your deliveries. I'm going to show you a couple of tips how to maximize your packaging for deliveries. We've got 3 fabulous takeaway friendly dishes to illustrate the power of packaging. We'll start with these beautiful bacon wrapped McCain potato wedges we've got in this insulated cardboard box, which will keep them nice and hot till they reach their destination. Here we have a fantastic side, our loaded chips. And what we do is we serve our hot cheese sauce separately so the chips remain crispy till they reach their destination. We've got this beautiful vegetable bowl with the side order of peanut sauce. And this packaging really lets the food speak for itself. This is the Sure Crisp chip sleeve, which is properly ventilated, keep the chips nice and crisp, and this box is insulated so they stay hot for as long as possible.
Good morning, and welcome to the McCain Insiders Roundtable Discussion Club webinar that we're doing, the McCain Insiders Club. The purpose of today's discussion and session is to gain insights and views from innovative industry experts and find out what their ideas are around progressing each and every one of our establishments. My name is Maps Maponyane, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. I'm really looking forward to it, looking around at the panel. But just before we get started, we want to get a couple housekeeping rules out the way. We're going to be having a chat functionality where you can ask your questions and be able to engage with each and every one of our panels on the board, as well as your peers via the chat functionality. And you can ask the panel questions using that Q&A box, which is below. Of course, we're using the Zoom service. If you're joining in from Facebook, that you can also add your comments in there, and we'll be sure to ask the questions. If you haven't followed us on social media as of yet, please follow us on LinkedIn. It is McCain Foodservice South Africa. On Facebook, it's McCain South Africa. On Instagram, it's McCain_SA. And on Twitter, it's McCain SA. And use that hashtag Hashtag McCain Insiders Club. That's McCain Insiders Club. And if you're experiencing any technical issues, please use that chatbot once again to speak to our technical team, and they'll be sure to help you through anything that you might need so that you can get your connection back on and running. And if you need the bathroom, of course, use the one that's nearest you, wherever you're watching us from. And the most important thing that we all need to do today is to be able to just enjoy this and have some fun and really walk away with some great insights about what assistance you might need or ideas you might need so that you can keep your establishment progressing and running at the best possible level. But we're going to kick off with a bit of a word from someone who is the marketing manager who currently heads up marketing for McCain's food services and retail divisions. She's got a passion for insights-driven marketing. She strongly believes in operational and execution excellence and is driven to push boundaries to keep brands relevant in an ever-changing environment. Ms. Katarina Bester, you amongst other things look after marketing for McCain Food Service Solutions and initiated the discussion that we're actually having today. Please tell us a bit about the McCain Insiders Club and why we really are here and what it is about.
Yeah, sure. So I think when lockdown happened and we were all going into like panic mode about what is it that we can do and how do we help not only ourselves but the industry in general, because we're trying to obviously rebuild and adjust to a lot of changing times. We quickly realized that we have access to a lot of industry experts. You know, Grace, we've walked quite a path with her. There's so many people that we can draw insights and inspiration from. There's a lot that we can share in terms of global understandings of how to navigate lockdowns. We were on global forums with the rest of the McCain world, and we were like, this is the kind of stuff we need to be sharing. And that's really the foundation of Insiders Club, is a group of like-minded industry players and restaurateurs that are talking to each other on a continuous basis, and we are sharing what we learn from our partners, from other suppliers. We are sharing it and packaging it for the restaurants in really bite-sized tips that they can easily consume and easily kind of read through. So we're not putting out folios and folios of material, but we kind of do little video tips, little toolkits here and there. Everything that we're doing is trying to help the industry recover, understand what's happening in the industry and how they need to adapt. And we hope to continue to build that out as we go forward into, you know, deals, hooking and connecting people for additional services. But right now, our initial focus is really just to share what we know and what we do best as a restaurant industry in terms of how to navigate a world that's changing daily, and really just helping the restaurants do the best they can and to adapt the best they can during this time.
Well, that is quite thorough and something that we definitely do need during this kind of time with a lot of restaurants struggling. And I mean, that's why we have each and every one of you to speak through a lot of those specifics and what those challenges are. And it's quite important that we have something like the Insiders Club so that we can also have these conversations collectively and not to be experiencing it alone. I think one of the biggest points that McCain has pushed with the Insiders Club is that we are in this together, and so we should be able to come out the other side of this together positively as well.
Exactly.
And there really is such a need to work more collectively, and for brands like McCain to come on board to provide that assistance in whichever way they can, and hopefully more brands can adopt that too. But it's wonderful to know that you know, you as representing McCain are doing this too. But now joining Katarina on the panel are some other industry experts. To my left is Grace Harding, CEO of Ocean Basket, and Grace has more than 30 years experience across several business disciplines and today runs Africa's largest seafood franchise. Grace has a background in HR, marketing, people engagement and strategy. She is also the spokesperson of the Restaurant Collective, an organization dedicated to creating unified voice for positive change in the sit-down industry, restaurant industry in South Africa. So thank you very much for joining us, Grace.
Cool, thanks.
And then we also have Tessa Perdon, Head of Content. Tessa's actually joining us from Zoom, as you see me kind of glance up at her. She's Head of Content at Eat Out and Food 24. Tessa is the head of content at Eat Out and Food 24, two publications with the biggest online food audience. She's been in the food media industry for 9 years and has a passion for learning, meeting new people, and telling meaningful stories through the lens of food. Welcome, Tessa.
Thanks so much.
And then we also have Daniel Goldberg, who is joining us in studio. He's a co-founder of Bridgement. Dan Goldberg is the founder of Bridgement, a fintech that offers simple finance to small businesses across South Africa. Founded in 2016 and launched in 2018. They offer short-term loans with a seamless online experience, enabling their customers to take on bigger projects and bridge cash flow gaps. So looking at the industry from different angles, which is really, really exciting. Dan, thank you for joining us, giving us a different perspective of the conversation we're going to be having. And I can see that already from the people that we've introduced, there's already a collective experience that's exceeding over around 50 or 60 years. And it's amazing with the knowledge that will be coming through. So welcome, everyone. It's really, really great to be here with you all and be the host for this conversation. As we all know, the restaurant industry has really, really been hit hard amidst this coronavirus pandemic, and some establishments were forced to close their doors for really prolonged periods of time. We haven't known how long this period was going to be, and you couldn't operate under that level of unpredictability and keeping your doors open as your restaurant is bleeding money. You're not able to look after your staff. You can't see the finish line. You're trying to figure out how you're able to adapt, how you're able to innovate, how you're able to come up with different ideas to keep the businesses afloat. I think at one point last year, towards the end of last year, in Gauteng alone, there were around 120 restaurants that had already closed in a span of around 6 months, which was absolutely frightening for many, many establishments. Not even just small establishments, but across the board. It didn't matter how big you were, you somehow really, really felt the wrath and challenges of the coronavirus pandemic. And it was also just so unique with each case, depending on your location, depending on the structure of your business, depending on the number of people you employ, depending on your overheads, depending on so many things, really dependent on whether or not you were going to be able to stay open or not. And we've obviously had to all have this crash course in running a restaurant during a pandemic, and we've all had to be able to adapt and think of the ways that can work for each and every one of our businesses. And that's been what's been particularly scary, extremely frightening, that fear of the unknown, but also kind of looking for any kind of silver lining, exciting about this time, because exciting about thinking about our businesses differently, about our restaurants differently, about how we can actually future-proof ourselves in case of anything like this happening again. I can't even say the word highly unlikely because we just don't know if this period that we're in. But at least you future-proof to a point where when things kind of go back to being a little bit more of a resemblance of normal, you can really run something that is super successful because of what you've put in during the most difficult of times. Personally, I've been quite fortunate to have still be in the industry and still have my restaurants open. I run a restaurant chain called Buns Out, and we are a burger joint, and we're a small business. When the pandemic started, actually, we were only 5 months into the business, and we've been fortunate with unbelievable level of business and customers coming in. We were what's the colloquial phrase? We were pumping every day, absolutely pumping, and we're so fortunate to have had the success that we had. And then immediately came to this grinding halt, and everything just stopped and essentially died overnight, and had to try and rebuild the business, which was only able to kind of resume in a period when it was about 4 or 5 months, when we had been around for as long as we'd already been in a pandemic, and now we'd had to kind of start from scratch again. You're having all the difficulties and challenges that you're having when you're a small new business, but then you're seeing a massive business like Ocean Basket also having their massive challenges as well, and you're thinking it's going to be a whole lot easier for them, perhaps only easier in retaining customers to come back because of the name that they've made for themselves. That makes it a whole lot easier, far more challenging for a small business in that regard. But these are kind of small details now. You're thinking, we only just got into this now. We're only starting to feel how this all works. We're only starting to get into our stride. Now this happens. What do we do? Lots of businesses having all kinds of different issues. it's something where it became this labyrinth that we all need to figure out how we could work through this labyrinthine maze and figure out how we could still get to the middle of it and get out of the situation without being hurt significantly. And so, Grace, I mean, how have you seen restaurants adapting to the current times, and what do you believe is a new trend for eating establishments moving forward during this kind of period? Because I know you've had to adapt quite significantly, and it was quite, when I was reading out right now that you have the experience of looking at sit-in restaurants, essentially. You took that a step further recently with the Ocean Basket, making sure that people can still sit in during that hard lockdown when they could sit in their cars too. You're one of the innovators in that.
The Roadhouse.
The Roadhouse.
Love
I
that.
can't take that one. That was actually a franchisee in Louis Trichardt.
Oh, wow.
But I think that goes to what Katerina was saying, which is the thing that we need to do is to connect people and to share. And you said lots of interesting things. COVID was unforgiving from a health perspective, unforgiving from a business perspective. But I think what it did is it highlighted weaknesses and gaps in businesses. So the restaurant industry, and I'm talking sit down, takeaway is very different. Takeaway businesses are machines. They are up to date with technology. They are up to date with systems. You go to a McDonald's and everything's on a conveyor belt, and it's so mechanized. The sit-down restaurant industry is never going to move away from people. We do have to become more efficient, but it's all about people. It's like, I hope I never go to the theater in West End and see Phantom of the Opera as a robot going, oh, Christine. So, so I think for sit-down restaurant industry, we've always been behind globally. And I started reading up a lot about it during COVID, because only when you get a good smack in life, you go, ugh,
Yeah.
So the enemy of success is success. And in all the reading, you read that sit-down restaurant industry is the most behind in adopting technology, modern business practice. A lot of restaurants were opened out of love and romance, out of ego. It's so wonderful to welcome friends and to smoke cigars. And what we've learned as an industry, and thank goodness Ocean Basket started to pick up on this a few years ago, is it's a true business and it needs to adopt modern business thoughts. It needs to be efficient. You need to manage your people differently. I mean, people management in this industry is scary.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the whole industry just got shook up, and we all had to increase our anxiety medication. I still think that there's some people who need lots more.
Yeah.
And we're on the road. But it was a shake-up. And yes, restaurants closed and they are reopening.
But I agree with that, Grace, because what COVID did is it accelerated a lot of things. And it was like a pressure cooker, because it accelerated trends that was on the peripheral, right? Things like off-premise dining, and deliveries. And it was kind of happening, but it was more in the fast food space, and people were like playing with it, but they weren't really serious about it because it was on the peripheral. And then the inefficiencies. People were able to hide a lot of, well, not hide, but they were able to get away with a lot of the inefficiencies because there was lots of ways that they could manage it in and out doing a normal trade. And in the beginning of COVID, it was like all of those things were put into a pressure cooker, and stuff was just rising to the top, and we were forced to very quickly make those changes and adapt. And unfortunately, it did result in restaurants closing. But like you say, there's lots of places also opening, because it is still an opportunity here. There's lots of opportunity. People are still wanting experiences. We love eating out in South Africa, so there's definitely opportunities, but it looks slightly different to what it did pre-COVID.
I'm scared of the word adapt because I think it can drive losing focus. So yes, COVID happened and we all needed to survive. And it is the thing that's more difficult for the smaller businesses like yours is you just got fewer friends. So that's why we formed the Restaurant Collective, because we believe that if we all get together, there'll be more support. So our franchisees, they're in a terrible state. But they've got people who are looking out for them and meeting new people, and people like Bridgestone, and there's innovation. Be very, very careful of the word adapt. It could cause a distraction of a business model that works, because a sit-down restaurant will always be needed. It's one thing. People have been eating together since before Christ. So sit-down restaurants will always exist. Did they have to adapt, do a few frozen meals? Deliveries went through the roof for Ocean Basket, but they're coming down.
Yeah.
And people aren't saying, oh, this is fun. Let me go out and put on my nice dress in my house while I eat the food out of a box.
Yeah.
Because even if the box is very tit, it's still a box.
Yeah.
And not all food travels well at the end of the day.
No food travels well,
Yeah.
except for jelly.
Except sure, Chris.
Yes, and of course, sugar crisps. Please, may I introduce sugar crisps? It's delicious, delicious,
Just
delicious.
get the fun in quickly.
We're gonna actually get to that a little bit later, because one of the challenges
We are the
of,
crisps.
of exactly of exactly that was ensuring. I mean, we had to go back to the drawing board where if we were going to do delivery, because I've always preferred personally for a kind of restaurant to have people sit down, because I want you to taste the food at its best, and that is always going to be sit down. So we kind of worked on our kind of recipe during the hard lockdown while we're closed, so that we ensured that when we get into deliveries, when we're allowed to deliver again, that we can have food that travels really well without changing the food, but perhaps timing the cooking of it, how we cook it, and even with Chris, for example, with fries, introducing, like playing around with is it the triple cook, is it the, whatever, which one travels better and which one can be reheated better, because there's nothing worse than getting that and not being able to do that. It slows the whole quality. But Dan, I mean, we speak about these challenges and how adapting can be dangerous, but there's also issues as a whole. I mean, look, we run restaurants and we love what we do as a whole, and we love people, but the fundamental challenge with running restaurants is people as a whole at some level, whether it is obviously beyond just the pandemic. You'll always have your challenges with, be it your suppliers or a customer or staff or whatever it might be. There's many different layers of people to have to consider that can wobble your ship at any moment. But what's just as hard hitting, but is not always a solution, but just as hard hitting, is ensuring that you have a good cash flow, because cash flow must be an issue for many restaurants at the moment. And I mean, how does that in turn affect small businesses and being able to pay off their creditors? And would you say that restaurants are keen on sourcing funding to be able to pay off their debt?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. We have seen a lot of our small business clients, a lot of restaurants being squeezed in just about every direction. They're being squeezed by landlords. They're being squeezed by banks. Banks are reducing overdrafts and pulling credit lines. Customers are spending less or not spending at all. And they're also being squeezed by their suppliers as well, where suppliers used to offer them trade credit, sell on 7, 14, 30 days. And now they're having to pay, cash up front. That has a huge impact on their cash flow and their ability to manage cash flow. So we've seen it a lot. The businesses, restaurants especially, are getting squeezed in every direction. I think, the question of like, are restaurant owners, are small business owners willing, and should they be able, taking on additional funding at the moment? It's a difficult question. I think funding can be an answer. It is not the answer.
Yeah.
I think you have to be very careful if you have a restaurant that is not performing well and it's loss making and you're in a lot of trouble. Sometimes taking on additional funding might accelerate things and make things even worse. On the other hand, if you have a plan in place, you see things turning around and you're just bridging a short-term gap in cash flow, or you're using it to purchase, from your suppliers who are no longer offering you credit terms, then maybe it's a great solution. But there's definitely not a sort of one-size-fits-all answer to that.
So it's actually funny, you didn't exactly say the words, but you kind of spoke to it about how, banks aren't really giving you those payment holidays anymore. And I mean, that's actually been such an interesting thing, where it's almost as if you were given this, it's like going on holiday and then being told that that leave actually is not applicable, and that you're going to have to work extra overtime for each and every one of those days, and you actually never quite catch up at all.
Yeah, or going on holiday and then you have to pay for your flights and your hotel for the next 6 months after you get back. So these, I think that's an additional pressure that businesses are facing. They got a lot of payment holidays and sort of relief programs and packages over the course of last year, and some even into the beginning of this year. But sort of, I think a lot of that has dried up now. There's no longer any relief. We found that the few landlords that did offer any sort of relief, because not all of them did, they certainly aren't anymore, and a lot of them are looking to recoup some of those losses. So that's just another pressure that these small businesses and restaurants are facing. It's not easy. Another thing we've seen is that going into the first lockdown, a lot of the restaurants and the business owners had a small buffer. They had an ability to handle and manage cash flow for a month or two. As we went into the second wave, there was less of that buffer because of the hit from the first wave. And now going into the third wave, you're just seeing that business owners are really struggling more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things around exactly that is finding all these kinds of ways that through the collectives, finding other ways that other businesses are being able then to mitigate that or work through that and ensure their survival. And someone who's always seeing all these innovative ideas and trying to see how other businesses are doing this is someone like Tessa, who is all about her passion for telling meaningful stories through food. I'm sure you've had all sorts of kinds of restaurants constantly knocking on your door and sending you emails of how you can possibly help them and help them with marketing or help them get out there. What kind of innovation have you seen from restaurants in kind of trying to survive this period?
Yes, Maps. So I think to echo Grace and Katerina, we're definitely seeing that for sit-down restaurants, the concept of takeaway and delivery has become crucial. So it's about sort of amending or creating dishes that are suitable for that format. That's going to be really important. And then we're seeing a lot more smaller menus. So we all know that due to the level of uncertainty that South African restaurants have had to deal with, it's really, really forced them to go back to the basics, get lean, and serve a menu that can be effectively executed by a smaller staff complement. And then also, with smaller menus or more concise and streamlined design, it means that you are more easily able to mitigate food waste. Of course, it does reduce your inventory levels, which is helpful if you have to, if you're forced to close at the click of a finger, which we've seen happen. But saying that, paring down your menu doesn't mean changing what you stand for. And I think it's actually the opposite. It really offers you an opportunity to become stronger and a more focused brand and business. So yeah, thinking also about what is a restaurant's USP. I think that's going to be crucial for restaurants to sort of really dig deep and try and figure out, what do you do better than anyone else? I think it's going to be about focusing on this and enhancing it, while also making sure, obviously, that it still fits in with your restaurant's brand identity.
Would you also add the optimization of menu pricing to that?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't hear you quite well.
Would you also add the optimization of menu pricing to that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing too. I would also add the portion sizing isn't going to necessarily get smaller with a smaller menu, but yes. Sorry, I don't think you guys can hear me.
No, we can hear you perfectly. We can hear you perfectly.
Oh, sorry, there's a bit of an echo on my side. Sorry. Yes, menu pricing is definitely going to fall into that. And I think with, a lot of suppliers are struggling at the moment as well. We've seen so many suppliers having to close their doors just because the demand isn't there anymore for them. So it's there's the ripple effect of COVID on not just restaurants, but the suppliers and the farmers is huge.
It is if I can, I mean, we all consumers, right? We all go to restaurants. We all eat out, right? So as much as we in the industry, we also make use of restaurants. And for me personally, I would much rather go sit in a restaurant where they have a smaller menu, can even be printed out on a normal piece of paper. I'm fine with it because we all understand the environment that we're in. Have a smaller menu, but absolutely deliver on the quality and the experience and the food that I'm going there for in the first place, right? And not those peripheral kind of nice to have add-ons that you would on the spur of the moment. Because now you're thinking about, why am I going out? What do I want to eat? So you're going out to a restaurant because of a specific meal or taste or experience. So it's okay to have a A4 printed out menu with your best dishes on there, as opposed to trying to keep your old menu alive, but you have half the things there are, not as fresh as they could be, or you've had to make some substitutes in order to make it work, and the overall experience is diminished. And for me, I see it often when I eat out, where I go, they're still trying to give me all the bells and whistles, but it's kind of done okay-ish, right? Versus another place where it's a small menu, it's their core, and it's done exceptional. And I'm fine there not to have the beautiful, elaborate, printed out and laminated menu. I'm cool with just having an A4 printed, paper with the menu on it. So, and I think those are kind of the things that our restaurants, I think, need to hear. It's okay to make those changes, because that's going to ensure that everyone going there will still have the best experience.
So to speak further to that, and from what kind of we've personally done in that regard, is if you can't offer everything, as you say, is just kind of to focus on the things that you can offer. But in the middle of a pandemic, when you're trying to save every cost, what it's done for me is accelerate my zero waste vision of the restaurant. It just makes more sense. Why would you want to hang on to any more stock and all this other stuff, hoping people will come through, when you can create a far more sustainable kind of streamlined business, which focuses on great products and everything that you'll always be able to get, but just this selection for now. But at least we are then optimizing our food supply, we're optimizing each and every one of our ingredients, and we're providing everything we can for that day, that period, because we've kind of then adopted and not adapted. We've adopted this kind of way of ensuring that we cut out one more expense that's just going to create more headaches of how we're not getting through this food. And then we have a day that is slightly quieter when we thought more people would come and order X, but they haven't. And now we have had to throw that away over time. And it's those kinds of things that for me just make more sense, which kind of push even more to lean down your menu, focus on what people kind of love the most, and rather give them that experience where they know what they're going to get. And people much rather love to get what they know they'll get, as opposed to possibly being disappointed by something either not being available because it's on the menu and you're saying it's not there, and we don't have this, and we don't have this, and we don't have this, a supplier, this, that. Rather just really just own whatever it is, and people will appreciate that more.
You see, the thing that's different, that's difficult is, I think people probably know this. So focus menu, all of that. What we've got to help people with, and that is our passion, the people who are driving the restaurant collective, is how do you learn to do that and learn to be like that? So it's very nice. It's like finances. We need to educate restaurant owners. Okay, to borrow money, to buy stock, to sell it, to make money, that's a very good idea. To borrow money, to put back into a black hole, not a good idea, but you are in a black hole, right? What else? So everything is so interweaved, and it's actually a very complex business. And what is happening is, I have to deal with today's pressure and anxiety, and if I make decisions in that mode, I could be damaging stuff for long term. So all of these moving parts are very complicated, because what some restaurateurs tend to do is they hear all these tips and then they want to implement them. So, okay, I'm going to do paper menu. Okay, I'm going to reduce my ingredients. Okay, I'm going to do this, instead of sitting down and saying, cool. And I think that's where we can help. All of us around this table, and say, let's have a workshop with 5 restaurant owners, one-man bands, people who've been in this game for ages. They are the ones who are probably the most affected because Mama's Pizzeria, I mean, I go to a pizza place near my home. Her name is Da Graziella. My name is Graziella because I think I am Italian. I think it's been open for about 37 years. She hasn't even painted the wall. So all I want to say to her is, Ella, Mama, let's paint your wall. Just paint it. Then we're going to do this. Then all these 19 desserts, let's have 12. Then let's do this. Then let's look at your cash flow. Let's call them in, bring them in. Let's look at your product. And McCain's incredible because they invest in education. So at some point, I think we must focus on the thinking that drives the execution of the idea.
And that was exactly what I was going to say is ask the question, reach out. If you're not sure what to put on your menu, ask your patrons. What do they love about your menu? Reach out to McCain or to your distributor or whatever and ask the questions. And if you're not sure, there's lots of people that are willing to help, right? And if you just ask one question, you'll be surprised how many other people are willing to kind of open up and come in and on board. And I think your idea, Grace, is brilliant. And I think maybe the next one shouldn't be a webinar. It should maybe be a workshop.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I think is the missing link. There's lots of information. There's lots of ideas of what to do. The guys are all hearing it, but it's the how to implement and what to focus on first, the prioritization that a lot of guys are struggling with.
And they're more collaborative. You know, in the olden days, I've only been in the restaurant industry 10 years. So if a competitor opened next to you, you'd have to kind of like spit on their pavement. Because it was a highly competitive environment, because it was also driven by very creative, passionate people. I live out of my business. Now you're going to come open next to me. You know, I'm going to spit in your food. So the one good thing about the pandemic, I don't know if I saw someone spit on the floor once. The wonderful thing about the pandemic is that there's more realization that we have to be healthy as a community. And now I hear restaurateurs saying, oh, I can't wait for the space next to me to be filled with another restaurant. I know that's how we feel in some spaces. Bring the burger, bring the pizza, no, we don't really want you to bring fish, but okay, bring it on. So it's changed, and that's been a good thing about the pandemic.
Could definitely
We
agree.
borrow sugar from each other without spitting in it.
I can definitely agree with that one because we've been quite fortunate in our Linden location for things to still kind of be running. But, you know, things obviously have dipped off quite a bit. And there was this art shop next to us which stayed closed the entire time. And then a new location, a new business opened. We were hoping it was a restaurant that could bring more people there who could then also in turn see ours. And as soon as they opened, we just like went over and like, oh, congratulations, amazing. You've established that partnership because it just kind of feels like,
100%.
you know, we'll all be able to, once again, kind of go through it together and can, you know, feed off of each other and help each other whenever we need to. And I think that's that collaborativeness that has been even better.
We have to, because it's the sit-down restaurant industry, and I have to enforce. Are you sit-down or?
We sit down. Sit down.
With waiters?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So the sit-down restaurant industry, there are so many one-man bands. That's the thing. So if you look at big groups in different businesses, for me, one of the best industries is the hairdressing industry. If there's one bunch of people that have created unification, consistency, standards, and that's what we need to do because it's hard alone. I mean, at least you've got like 2 or 3 restaurants and some friends, but some people got no friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard. And no education.
Yeah, around exactly that. And we were speaking earlier about delivery and how that's picking up, but then how Stun obviously will still kind of end up always being the one. With delivery being the need right now, how does you as McCain maintain that people are able to ensure great quality offsite consumption?
So if I can just talk a little bit about off-premise, so takeaway and delivery first, right? So we've just done some research with Kantar that there's still going to be a continuation of people saying they will continue to eat out, or they are going to continue to eat delivery and takeaway more post the pandemic. So I think I totally agree with you. Sit down is definitely going to recover. It's already recovering, but there is going to be a higher incidence of off-premise going forward. A lot has to do with people working from home and really super stressed and having a lot to, because now they're sitting in board meetings, everything. So cooking becomes it's a difficult thing, and people are worn out. So they are actually potentially opting for more off-premise meals throughout the week. So, and we spoke about food not traveling well, right? And that's really a big thing. And chips, unfortunately, or fries, unfortunately, don't really travel that great. And it's one of the most profitable sides in a restaurant. So you cannot afford for chips to all of a sudden be swapped out for things that are less profitable in a period where you already, struggling, and you're counting your pennies and you're trying to.
Do you know what you
optimize.
must do? You must do an air fryer promotion, and you, Dan,
We'll fund it.
you must
fund
it. Because air fryer is like
The best
the
reheat.
universe gift to saving food.
Well, when we order takeaways, we stick the chips back in the air fryer.
And it's
Exactly.
brilliant,
And they're
right?
So
McDonald's
great.
fry
Amazing.
and McDonald's fries in the air fryer is even better when it comes out of the drive-through. But I think it first starts with having the correct products. That's the ultimate. If you're serious about making inroads into off-premise, and you're serious about trying to maintain the quality of your food in the off-premise occasion, you have to start with the right products. And that does mean that you have to have a product that's coated.
Yeah.
A clear coated product, even a heavily battered product, what that does is that seals in the heat and it retains the crispiness for longer. Because that's what we want. You want to bite into that crispy chip. And that's the first thing if you order takeaways, please, tonight when you all order takeaways, what's the first thing you take out of the bag? Is the chip, right? And it kind of sets the tone for it. So it's critical that you get the right products in. If you, for whatever reason, are not able to make the transition to a coated chip, then really looking at your packaging practices is important. Condensation is the biggest thing that happens in that travel, and condensation is what leads to chips becoming soggy and not edible, really. So things like not packing it with the hamburger, having it in a separate container, putting a serviette underneath the burger box or wherever you're putting your chips in. Those are the little things that you can do to try and absorb some of those moisture that happens over time as the chips are traveling, to make sure that you at least retain some of that fresh out of the fryer feeling. But really, ultimately, the best way of going is with a product like Sure Crisp. Sure Crisp is designed specifically to stay crispy for at least 30 minutes. And we've tested it time and time again. When you open up that packet, that crispy bite still delivers. And that's products that are designed for it. Other things are operational practices, like you say. So, for example, if people are ordering meat rare, then don't make it rare, or if it's medium, don't make it medium. Kind of undercook it slightly, because it's going to continue cooking for you as it's traveling.
Yeah.
So you've got to really think about the journey your food's taking to someone's home.
Think out the box a little bit.
Yeah.
Dan, you've obviously, when you started in different industries, and Abridgement is quite broad, and you still are fairly a new company. And I think if anyone's been accelerated as well, it's been your business, but also it's been your knowledge around the functionings of restaurants as a whole. What are some of those really interesting challenges that you've come across through what restaurant owners have presented to you when they're trying to prove their case, and while you've gone through due diligence to be able to provide them with that cash flow or not?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of innovation from restaurants, a lot of adaptation without getting too distracted from the main goal. It really comes down to, typically what we're seeing a lot, as mentioned before, is dealing with suppliers. We've seen a lot of suppliers stopping to offer trade credit. And so that immediately puts pressure on a restaurant. Restaurants that used to have 7 days or 14, or maybe if they're lucky, a month to pay suppliers, all of a sudden having to pay up front, that puts immediate pressure on cash flow. So that's a big one that we've seen a lot from restaurant clients, is essentially facilitating and funding their purchasing of inventory. At Bridgement, we offer sort of revolving credit lines, so we help them with those sort of ongoing needs. It's not a once-off need. With other restaurants, we've seen them pivoting to new products, whatever it is, and maybe they require some sort of new equipment, but they may not have the cash on hand to go and purchase, a big expensive piece of equipment up front. What we do is we help them pay that off over 12 months. That's another common one. We've seen other ones adapting the layouts of their restaurants. Again, some costs are incurred in that and helping them fund those costs. So usually we're assisting them in funding positive changes as opposed to, funding a hole where the funds might, not ever come back.
Yeah.
May I ask a question? Am I allowed to
Go
ask
for
a
it, go for
question?
it, no problem.
I think it would be so valuable as you're talking. I wrote here, what does a good candidate for funding from your company look like? So when you review a restaurant, P&L, or their situation, if you could tell us, like, what 5 things equal, okay, we are going to lend you the money, we think it's a good idea?
A good question. So, and it's a difficult one to answer because our assessment is sort of done with this automated tech platform, which takes thousands of data points into account. So difficult to distill it into, five different, sort of single points. I think there are a number of factors at play. So the first is, obviously, with any restaurant, trade history is important. So a brand new restaurant that started trading today is much more difficult to provide funding to because you don't have track record. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Another really important one is what their existing obligations are, specifically their debt obligations, but any other ones that they may have, whether it's landlords or whatever else it is. So it's always super important, and that's one of the key parts of what we assess is, what are your existing obligations? The last thing we want to do is come and grant additional funding when a restaurant or, a small business has too much funding already and they're already struggling to manage all of that. Obviously industry is an important factor at play always. Cash flows is always an important factor. Of course, we are very much aware that if a business is coming to us, they probably don't have strong cash flows. Otherwise, they wouldn't come to us. We take everything with a pinch of salt, obviously. And where they're in an industry where they've been particularly, hard hit, it's important to see what's the plan. How are you getting out of this? Where, what are you changing? Or is this just a 2 or 3 month bridge that you need to get back up on your feet? Do you just need to get through the COVID, the peak of the lockdown? So we had many clients coming to us at the beginning of the third wave, in every wave. And, these businesses come and their revenue is down 80%, sometimes worse. And I think a traditional lender would probably look at that and be like, we cannot touch this.
Yeah.
We've taken the view, and obviously we engage with each business on a case-by-case basis, where if, we know that they will get through this and they'll come back and they'll get back to where they were, if not better. We saw so many businesses bounce back to a stronger position than
100%.
pre-COVID. And we take that view that we are fine knowing that they're going to have minimal cash flow over the next month or two during the peak of the lockdown, but they'll get through it.
It's interesting that they want a plan. So everything connects, a plan for the good food, a plan for the reduced menu, a plan for the labor. It's just so interesting.
Yeah. We also have a bit of a question for Tessa. Don't worry, Tessa, we haven't forgotten about you. We can see you're watching. You're watching us there. If I look at a lot of businesses right now within the restaurant industry online, we have a case where, stats are kind of showing that 90% of consumers will firstly research a restaurant before they go to it. 77% of those people are likely to look at their websites, and a third of them will read the reviews. And so what comes out from all of that is that you genuinely need a really strong online presence in this kind of time to be able to get your restaurant out there some more and keep new customers coming through your doors. So in your kind of, in your opinion, what are the necessary tools needed for this?
Yes, Maps. So generally speaking, I think we can all agree that our online behaviors have evolved since the internet came into our lives. So it's really going to be about revising your strategy and kind of like moving with that evolution. It might sound obvious, but it's really, really key to have a mobile-friendly website. you'd be surprised at how many people don't. And I'm not sure where I heard or saw this stat recently, but apparently more than half of those near me Google searches, you know, where you type in like restaurants near me or pharmacies near me, more than half of those actually convert into a physical store visit. So, you know, it really is important to have a website that's up to date, that's running smoothly. And then I think social media is obviously a real dominant force in society today, which means that for a restaurant brand, it's no longer just a nice to have. It's really essential. And if you think of it, it's a free way to promote your business. But again, speaking to the kind of the keeping things simple and straightforward, I think it's also about being intentional of how you use social media. It doesn't mean that you have to be on every single platform that there is, because that's completely overwhelming. COVID has obviously definitely accelerated the whole move towards digital ways of operating. So I think it's also just thinking a little bit outside the box of what other opportunities online there might be, like online ordering, whether that's through your own platform or possibly a third-party platform, which obviously helps with your reach of awareness. But as we all know, they do charge quite high fees. So it's just kind of weighing up all of that. And at the end of the day, you know, having an online presence, I think, really helps you to better tell your brand story. So if you think of it, when customers come to your restaurant or they choose your food, there's a reason that they're doing it. They've connected to your story, and the food that you serve obviously stands out to them.
Absolutely.
I'm keen to hear what the others have to say about that.
Yeah, actually, I want to kind of send that to Katarina, because, you know, a lot of these restaurants that have established ways and knowledge of promoting their businesses have done significantly better than restaurants that haven't had that. But then what kind of advice would you then give to those businesses that haven't had those kind of marketing tools and ways of keeping their businesses running?
No, absolutely, because Tessa, I 100% agree with you. If you're not online, you are definitely missing out on customers, and that is what people are looking for when they, especially when they get a recommendation. So, you know, you don't have to invest a lot of money into it, but you are going to have to invest some time into it. And, you know, there's platforms like Wix, Wix, as an example, where you can build your own website. It's literally paint by numbers.
Free websites as well.
Yes, it's free. It's completely free. And I've done it myself. I like for a little blog I once wanted to start. It's really super easy. Pick a platform that you are most comfortable with. So if you're currently using Facebook, then, you know, build your restaurant profile on Facebook. If you're an Instagrammer, then, you know, that's what you've got to do. Photos of your menu items is critical, especially if you want to go onto ordering platforms. I see this every single time, especially if I don't know your restaurant. If you don't put a photograph of your food on your ordering platform, I don't know what I'm ordering. And use Google. There's a lot of, once you're on Google, you know, there's lots of things that you can do to update your trading times, you know, your busy times, you know, reduced hours, lots of those things. So if you can just do those 4 things, in my opinion, find a free online platform where you can build a website like Wix, and I mean, that's the only one I know. There's tons of them. Find a social media platform that you are comfortable with and build your story on there. Make sure that you have photographs on all of your ordering platforms of your menu items, and make use of the Google stats so that your website is best representative. Because there's nothing as bad as if you say, I'm open from 9 until 7, and I get there at 10, and you're not open. You've changed your times, but you haven't updated. I'm not going to come back to your place again. It's annoying, right?
Yeah.
So those are my top 4 tips for that.
Well, while we're still chatting about this, we want to remind you that at home you can ask us questions within the Q&A chat functionality that we have in the chat, as well as your comments on Facebook. I know we probably are covering quite a lot, and hopefully we are answering all those questions. But please feel free to do that so we can keep the conversation going, and you can put those forward to anyone in our panel so that we can try and answer those questions. But I'm really, really happy with how we're getting through a lot of the, we're getting into the meat of a lot of it. Dan, I mean, how would you say that fintech, beyond just the bridging, how would you say that fintech finance can help the restaurant industry? And is it wise for restaurants to invest in, their marketing efforts and requirements to adjust to this changing landscape?
I think in terms of fintech, one of the really important things which is highly relevant to small businesses and earlier stage entrepreneurs is that the minimum criteria and the requirements is typically a lot lower than a bank. So, one obvious example is trade history. I mentioned that before. Many banks will often not be willing to even look at you for funding before you've been trading for 2 or 3 years. And they have, a bit of a track record with you. With us, it's as short as 6 months. So much, much shorter trade history required. Another really important one is no collateral or security required. So oftentimes when you're going to a bank, they're going to ask you for some sort of security. They want to provide funding that is completely secured. And so what a fintech funder like Bridgement does is it removes that need, which is very helpful for a small business, a small restaurant, which often has no security or collateral, and also may not want to sign surety in such an uncertain environment and economic situation that we find ourselves in now. If your business is under pressure, do you really want to go and sign your house, up and take that personal risk as well? So I think there's some really important differences there. And ultimately, from a convenience and speed point of view, some business owners need funding quickly, whether it's to pay a supplier or pay a landlord or pay salaries. And sometimes you can't afford to spend 3 to 5 weeks, filling in all the forms and the lengthy paperwork at a bank. So the speed and the turnaround times that you have with a fintech funder like Bridgement, I think helps to solve that. I think funding new marketing and sales initiatives is a great idea. Obviously, you need to be careful, make sure you're funding the right things. But we're seeing that businesses that are adapting and creating new ways of selling and marketing themselves are the ones that are succeeding, and taking on funding to fund that can be a great idea.
And it's such a vital point that you make there, because it's something that I'm always aggressively fighting for. You see it across corporate and you see it across all businesses. As soon as there's a crisis that happens and there's cash flow issues, the first thing that is cut is usually marketing. When usually I feel that should be what money should be put in the most, so that you can actually, from that point of view, revive the business. But that's another debate altogether. Tessa, from a marketing perspective, what would you say are the most important steps for restaurants to be taking in order to rebuild?
Yes, so as we've mentioned, an online presence is key, and I would also encourage all restaurant owners to take advantage of listing directories like Eat Out, for example. We offer it for free, and you can update your listing at any time. So there's that. I would also say being involved in your community is really important. South African restaurants, as we know, are currently heavily reliant on local customers. And so the people in your community are likely going to be the ones who are going to be your regulars. So I think it's about thinking how you can better cater to them, whether that's having cooking demonstrations or games evenings, just something that can draw in the people around you. And then consider what possible events are taking place in your area, seeing if there's a way that you can collaborate, where you serve the food, and thinking how you could be seen in a place that's sort of unexpected or unusual, because that's when you'll stand out. And I think another thing is to consider having or creating a standout dish on your menu that you can really become known for, preferably one that photographs well on social media. And it might sound shallow, but you really want to tap into that FOMO factor. People really don't like being left out. And so if you're seeing this image of a dish being shared by all your friends, it just creates that just a higher level of awareness of your brand. But I think, generally speaking, word of mouth is by far the most powerful marketing tool out there. So it's really about thinking creatively of how you can foster that through all your marketing efforts.
Great advice given there. Grace, this is obviously a very unique time where we've had to put in something that we haven't mentioned yet, but that has also had its own costs, but has also really made us think about the way we function within a restaurant, and that is hygiene as a whole. I mean, restaurants, have had to adopt a number of safety measures and sanitary protocols as well due to the pandemic that we've been in. I mean, is this something that you think will be practices that will continue for the foreseeable future? I mean, I like the fact that it's really made us really focus on being cleaner than ever before. And, I think it's made the whole environment cleaner. And I think to a certain extent, that could be a positive.
I think from a COVID perspective, we're going to be sanitizing for a long, long time and wearing masks at least another year. I don't know if the COVID sanitation and the nerves around those germs has enhanced overall safety and hygiene in restaurants. I don't know if that has impacted the standards back of house, the different color coding of boards. I don't know. I think we've got a long way to go. In the UK, we just heard the other day that different roles in the restaurant have to take a different course. So if you're back of house, the online course you've got to do on safety and hygiene, it is hectic. Our restaurant specialist who's been with us for 23 years, he took it. And he is so poop scared now to do the exam. It is hectic. Then if you're front of house and you're only taking dishes, you've got to do this course. If you are cleaning dishes. So I think in the country, and I always say that we are cooked in the soup of South Africa, hygiene and safety protocols in restaurants need to be upgraded. We need to develop star systems and all of those things. That's on my list of things to do, number 72. So I don't think it impacted on overall hygiene. And if you don't have that sanitizer, I think it will make some customers nervous. And then there's customers who walk in and say, but the man just sprayed me. So, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But yes, please clean up your restaurants.
Absolutely.
What are you seeing happening within the restaurant space?
I definitely feel that there's an embrace for off premise. I think restaurants are really understanding that they're there to fulfill an experience, and I think they really are trying to do the best that they can with what they know. And for the most part, I believe the restaurants are trying to follow the protocols to their best of their ability, but they at the same time trying to stay alive. But for me, the biggest thing is that you are not alone, right? And I would reach out, make a friend, right? And I definitely see that collaboration happening. I see people reaching out more often. I see suppliers collaborating. I see suppliers and route to market people collaborating. You would never in a million years would I sit around a table with the likes of Unilever and RCL and Bitfood and have a conversation about what we need to do together,
that was the best thing.
And it really is. And the Restaurant Collective and and Rosa and all of these guys, I think we all are aiming for the same thing, and some of those boundaries have been broken down, and I think that's an absolute beautiful thing, and I hope it continues to break down and we continue to work with one another in support of our restaurants.
Yeah, good point.
Grace, off the back of that, I mean, we've obviously spoken about all the different things that the pandemic has brought about. Is it too soon to say what the food service industry will look like and what will differentiate different restaurants from each other, what will define them, and what consumers will seek from them?
Sure. Where's the crystal ball? First of all, I think we have to solve consumer guest problems. People don't know what they want. They really don't.
Vital point.
Apparently, when they did research for 4x4s, for normal street driving, they didn't say to people, well, do you think you'd like a car like this? Although you are never going to go on sand. They asked questions like, what do you dream about? What would make you feel more relaxed and in control? And people spoke about they want to climb mountains, they want to be able to escape. And then here are the 4x4s, and how many 4x4s are actually even going the biggest thing they go over is a speed bump. So the guest doesn't know what she wants. And we've got to get closer to her, and we have to care, because we are in the business of solving problems, and especially the restaurant industry. This is where people come to just forget for a while, to ease their troubles. People do have less money in South Africa. In the UK, the restaurants are going mad because when they were having lockdown, they all still got salaries and stuff, so now they're spending. South Africa is completely different. I think there's more competition. So from a restaurant perspective, care about your guests, but proper care, proper care, and look after your people. They've had reduced shifts, TERS paid out once or twice, a little bit of UIF. The people, if there's one thing that we are obsessed with, it's the people. And what are we going to do? Because we don't have the money to give increased wages. But what else can you do? Can you share shifts in a different way? Can you say thank you? Can you offer a meal and make the day a little bit easier? So like we keep on saying, it's everything. You know, I bet you go to Bridgestone and say, can you give me an extra couple of bucks? I want to feed my people. Your people must be as happy as they can be. Your guests must feel as welcome as they can. Your menu must be slick. Your kitchen must be clean. Your bathrooms must be amazing. And all of this, and you're exhausted. So it is really tough, because when you are depleted and you've got to give to someone else, it's not easy. So our next workshop will be therapy.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
I tried that once. Anyway.
But just on the back of
I love that, Grace.
on the back of that too, Bridgestone will more than likely give you tires before they give you cash.
Oh,
But Bridgement
Bridgement.
will give you money.
Do people do that a lot, Dan?
They haven't, but now I think you've started a new trend.
Dan, you should have just said they do.
I know.
Dan, do you know what you want from a purely consumer perspective when it comes to a restaurant? And then just with that, what would then be your advice to the McCain Insiders Club?
Yeah, I mean, from a personal consumer point of view, I don't know. I'm not sure I do know what I want. What I do know is I have a lot of cabin fever and I want to get back to restaurants. My partner, Christy, and I used to every week go to Ocean Basket, and we had stopped that for a few months. And then last week we went back and we were like, wow, we forgot. Oh, yeah, it was amazing. It was at Marisage, by the way. It was amazing. And they've got a beautiful outdoor seating section there
Really
as
nice
well.
one there,
Yeah, really nice. We had a glass of wine. It was Monday night. It was great. And we've forgotten how nice it is to sit at restaurants. So we'll definitely be resuming our weekly tradition. In terms of our thoughts and advice for restaurants and small businesses, I think obviously I'm talking from a finance and a cash flow point of view. I think everyone knows that businesses are under pressure. Everyone knows that it's largely not your fault. It's from externalities. And I think take advantage of that. Engage with your creditors, engage with your bank, engage with your landlords. It's something that we find so often, that businesses will sooner default on payment and just miss their payment and not say a thing, hoping that their problems will just disappear, as opposed to actually just going and confronting their creditors or their bank or their landlord and saying to them, guys, we're in a pickle here. What can we do? Can we make a plan? The creditors, and I can tell you that from Bridgman's point of view, view that as 1,000,000 times better than if you go and miss a payment.
That's the best piece of advice. And we have to have another workshop on confrontation.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Because head in sand is what we used to.
Yeah.
But that's brilliant.
It just leads to nothing but
Just
lawsuits
pick
in
up
the end,
phone.
really.
Yeah. And the only people who get rich are the lawyers.
Tessa, I've seen you vehemently nodding your head. What are your thoughts and the advice you would give to the McCain Insiders Club audience?
Yes, so apart from some of the great tools and tips that have been shared today, I think the food needs to have a unique identity, and it needs to capture who your brand is and where you are. South Africa, as we know, is such a beautiful nation with so many differences and so many things that unite us. But I think that when serving food, it's really important to give a sense of where you are enjoying it or where you're eating it. And so that's what I'm really looking for when I go to a restaurant, and that I hope that more chefs and restaurateurs will take that to heart. I would also say to probably keep regularly asking yourself, what drew you to the restaurant or the hospitality industry to start with? Because I think that answer will always be a kind of guiding North Star when things really start to get rocky.
Thank you very much, Tess. And any final words from you? Even though you kind of started it off, any final words from Ms. McCain herself?
No, I just want to thank all of the guests for being here. I think it was a great conversation. I really appreciate everyone that joined into the call. Hopefully there was information that was shared that was of use. And I think this is going to be version 1 of many. I think we're going to do the workshop next, and then the handling confrontation and a whole session, Tessa, on marketing and kind of how to take things forward for a restaurant. I think that's really great. And this was the purpose of this: is let us be your friend, let us be the people that you reach out to, because we want to help the industry and we want everyone to be successful, and because we want to go out to restaurants. I also love eating out. I hate cooking, so that's at the end of the day what it's all about.
No, absolutely. I've always said I absolutely love food, and I run a restaurant, obviously, and love kind of cooking and eating, but I've always eaten a whole lot better than I've cooked. As we come to the end of the session, thank you to each and every one of you for joining us in this discussion. Tessa, thank you so much. Grazie. Thank you very much, Grace. Katerina, and as well as Dan, for your insights and that different perspective that you shared. It's been really, really valuable having your input. And of course, thank you, McCain, for putting this together. It's something that's really, really important for us to be able to have as often as possible. And thank you to everyone that's been joining and watching us from wherever you're watching us. And I hope you've learned something and have felt that, feel a lot more encouraged about your business. If you're not a part of the McCain Insiders Club, please make sure that you do join the club. It's very, very valuable. And I think from the collaborative perspective, there's a lot that I'm sure you're able to take away, and hopefully can be able to take even more away when you join the club and ask the questions that you might need answers to, and gain more information that you may, of course, valuable information that you may or not have any on right now, that we're able to be willing to assist on requiring your business, and hopefully notice a whole lot more about events like this as we send out the mailers and all those industry insights that we need. And we'll be sharing a link right now to be able to do that, and you're able to do that and join as a member ASAP. So make sure that you look out for that link in the chat box. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thank you to our panel, and I hope you each have a very, very lovely week from all of us. I was asked to end this at 11:15. Goodbye.
Bravo.
While restaurants may be open, we're still experiencing lockdown restrictions and labor pressures, testing our resiliency to the extreme. And while the challenge may seem daunting, McCain has some relatively simple and helpful tips to help operators rebuild and recover. Pack your menu for optimal sit-down, takeout, and delivery performance. You don't have to create new dishes. Rather, create variety and excitement on existing dishes using potato specialty sides. Craft an independent takeout or delivery menu from your sit-down menu that will perform in takeout packaging. People are feeling the economic effects of the pandemic, so make sure to provide a selection of affordable options, specials, and of course, your signature dishes. Keeping costs low isn't always easy, but with restaurants operating with half of their floor space, it's essential. It's difficult to plan your day-to-day prep, never really knowing what to prepare. Minimizing waste is critical. Using quality, quick cooking frozen vegetables will help take the guesswork out of pre-cooked prep. Streamline your back-of-house operations to ensure efficiency. Versatile and quality frozen ingredients equal minimal touch points, equals less prep work, equals consistency. Ensure that staff understand operations from cooking time to plating instructions. Train your staff to optimally package meals for takeaway and delivery to ensure a restaurant quality in-home dining experience. Safety will remain top of mind for customers for the foreseeable future. Make sure that your restaurant is following strict safety protocols at all times to ensure that your customers always feel safe and happy. Make sure to support local suppliers. We're all in this together. Let's get through it together. And may the sauce be with you.